Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to The Back Road, the only podcast comfortable taking the scenic route while we discuss business, marketing, creativity, and life itself. If you're looking to build your brand, grow your audience, or find your perspective, then stick around because Coach Ethan is in the building. Coming up on The Back Road, I'll share a story about one of the first weddings I ever worked where far too many things went wrong. I'll talk your ear off about how this year, the rookies new to my company somehow outperformed the veterans I've relied on for years. And I'll let the cannon loose on why craft fairs have become a lawless land of duplicated ideas and copycat competition. All of that and more, just around the corner. Today's theme is evolving. Evolution is a funny thing. It rarely feels like what you picture when you imagine growth. Go ahead, imagine it. Close your dang eyes and imagine it. Unless you're driving, then definitely keep your eyes forward. When you think of growth, you probably think of positive momentum, abundance, and triumph. But that's not it at all. In the real world, evolution feels like trying to reorganize your desk while your chair is slowly rolling backwards. Evolution tests your patience, it tests your identity, it tests your mind, your body, and your spirit to see what you can hold while it hurls tomatoes at you. And that's why this episode is a direct reflection of that exactly. Turns out, progress only looks like progress when you look behind you. But before we walk down that winding rabbit hole, at this juncture, let's talk about how this podcast is evolving. The Back Road has been a moving target since day one. When we launched, it was nothing more than an audio example detailing exactly how to make a podcast. Pretty meta, right? Then it course-corrected into a scripted program, experimented with interviews, and dove deeper into concepts and strategies that fuel businesses, creativity, and the maze of being a modern human. Each new episode made adjustments to improve on its predecessor, and if you've been listening since day one, you have felt every shift. And that roadmap is changing again. As the logo on my hat implies, which is usually hanging on the wall behind me, this is a production of Northern Oak Media, the video agency that I built to bring all of my entertainment-centered endeavors to life as my social media alter ego, the Main Man. However, the Backroad podcast is no longer primarily an entertainment podcast, because it's turned into something much more than that. Today, as much as I do want to provide an entertaining program to you, this show is meant to be more of an informative listen, a valuable experience, and a thoughtful commentary on the world around us. So, to keep that vision alive, all Backroad video content will now be released exclusively on Northern Oak Media socials instead of on the Main Man channels. Full-length episodes will be posted to YouTube, shorter clips on TikTok, Facebook, Reels, and the audio version will still be released as normal everywhere you listen to podcasts. Change tends to scare people because they believe change means something went wrong. But change is usually more proof that something is working. Change is recognizing that something that is working needs an adjustment. Change is resilience. In today's world, continuous shifting and objective pivoting is really the only way to keep your goals within reach. Everything's always changing, so you have to too. So as we head into the lessons of this episode, keep this idea of what evolution actually looks like fresh in your mind. Because growth is messy, uncertain, and incredibly frustrating. But if you embrace the uncomfortable, it can become the very thing that prepares you for what lies ahead. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of this episode. Let's go to a wedding. A wedding that takes place somewhere between a fever dream and an Amish after-party. Sounds like a horrible party. 8 years ago, a friend of a friend asked a different friend to film and photograph her cousin's wedding, so that friend asked me and another friend to join in as additional shooters. We thought it was just an ordinary wedding. Something we felt confident to tackle because we'd gotten pretty good at them in the year prior. We'd been practicing for a while. But this wedding proved to be a little bit more tricky than anticipated. One wedding, stretched across 2 different cities, 3 states away from home, resulting in 4 code red situations. I should probably make clear at this point that while this story is about a series of shipwrecks, it's not meant to cast anyone in a negative light. I genuinely love everyone involved, but what happened here was a chain of events that changed how I approached my career forever. So it's a story I got to tell. The journey began before the cameras ever rolled. We were in Maine, the wedding was in Massachusetts, and the lodging was in New Hampshire. Already not ideal. We left Maine late in 2 cars, drove 4 hours, slept on the floor of someone's mom's house, woke up early, piled back into the cars, and headed to where the bride was getting ready a few hours away. When we arrived, we slowly realized we were in the middle of worst case scenario number 1. Nobody was getting ready. Or to put it more accurately, nobody was doing anything. For hours. You wouldn't have known someone was getting married. There was like no joy. We waited in a stranger's room, unable to capture any human moments for like 3 hours. And because we were just starting off in our careers, we desperately didn't want to look useless, so we shot everything we could find. Photos on the wall, childhood memorabilia, mugs, fridge magnets, cats, basically their entire family story. But eventually we realized we needed to split up. Because while we still needed to get footage of the bride getting ready, or at least the dress, we also had to set up the ceremony equipment ahead of time. And for reasons that never made much practical sense to me or anyone, the ceremony location was an hour away. So 2 of us left, one behind the other, with the third staying behind to hitch a ride with the bridal party later. And then about 30 minutes into driving down a hot, humid, and hilly highway, I got a call from the shooter behind me. "Your car is on fire!" Worst case scenario number 2 had just ignited. We pulled over, and sure enough, the brakes were glowing red like they had been forged in the heart of a dying star by Thor himself. But we had no choice but to keep moving. We crawled our way down the highway with our hearts in our throats, hoping the wheels at least stayed attached long enough to make it to the venue. And thankfully we arrived safely, which just so happened to be at a gun club. That is not a joke. That is where they were getting married, on the range. Somehow, the location was not worst case scenario number 3. No, that came a little bit later. First, we had to set up all the cameras, place the microphones, and gather some establishing shots. We even had a little extra time to get some drone footage, something we were experimenting with back then and excel at now. And when we finished, right in time for the ceremony to begin, we realized that with the exception of the groom next to us, not one person was here. Eventually, I had to ask what was going on, and the groom told me that his family lived in South America, and they were attending via a live video call set up on a tripod in the front. But the rest of the guests were scheduled to arrive with the bride. So we waited alone, the 3 of us. 15 minutes went by. Nobody showed up. Then we waited another 30. Now we're way past the ceremony time. Still, no cars pulled in. Welcome to worst case scenario number 3. I call the other photographer to see what's going on. No answer. Groom calls his fiance. No answer. We call the officiant. No answer. I couldn't help but empathize with the man, imagining how he felt. Abandoned, confused, heartbroken. And somehow, we the videographers were the only people around to comfort him in his time of agony, honestly. Eventually, after like 45 minutes of pure awkward silence and confused tears, I got a call from my teammate. They had been stuck behind bridge construction with no cell phone service. And it turns out that because all of the family and guests were coming from the same area, they were all trapped behind the same obstacles. A few minutes later, everyone arrived all at once, scrambled to their seats, the music started, the groom exhaled, they said their vows, they smooched each other, and it was over. All should be much better now. Until the reception, aka worst case scenario number 4. Why was this bad? Because it was DOA, dead on arrival, DED in the ARV. Turns out being accidentally stood up at the altar is a little bit of a vibe killer. The dances went by quick, the speeches even quicker, and the only live action to be found was at the buffet table. Thank God it was barbecue. Good barbecue at that. Then out of nowhere, Dad stood up from his chair and erupted into dance like he'd sat on a thumbtack, and for a moment we thought the party was going to light up. Then he sat down 2 minutes later, and the room fell silent again, and we left 3 hours early with almost no worthy reception footage. Just kind of a total disaster. But here's the thing. Every one of those moments taught me something. Traveling taught me to plan smarter. Waiting taught me patience under pressure. Splitting up taught me to trust my intuition. A tire fire taught me to address small problems before they became big ones. A lonely groom taught me empathy. And the reception taught me that some things are just out of my control. These reasons and more are why this episode's earful is all about what gets revealed when pressure is applied. Part of evolving is accepting the growing pains that come with it. This year hit me with a big one when my company had a capacity problem. We had more shoots than we had reliable talent to execute them. And when you work in a creative field, finding new talent is about as hard as finding a lighthouse when the bulb is unplugged. Thankfully, I'm not a stranger to the process of recruiting. Every year, I bring in 2 or 3 new names, provide them with training, feedback, and opportunities to learn, and if I like them, I'll throw more and more work their way as we go on and make sure they're paid what they're worth. Typically, one of them will flame out pretty quick because they're not able to meet my new expectations, but the others will quickly show promise. And if they're able to impress me over the course of the first year, chances are they're still getting contracted by me to this day. And this year, I found myself needing more help than normal, and 2 to 3 new names wasn't going to cut it. After a long search, I collected about a dozen names and ended up onboarding about 6 of them. Well, not about 6 of them, 6 people. There's no have people. 3 of them had formal training from the New England School of Communications, and the other 3 were self-taught, just so you know there's some diversity here. These 6 rookies were all placed with veterans, so they could have strong mentorship, chances to ask questions, and enough protection to keep them from failing. Together, these crews worked on about 10 projects for me, and when all was said and done, one unexpected piece of information rose to the surface. Somehow, some way, the newbies had outperformed my ringers. They had less experience, but provided a better experience to the client. They lacked confidence, but followed our formula perfectly so no one noticed. They weren't as skilled, but their materials had more flexibility. They gave more value, more energy, and more commitment than the contractors who had been with me for 3+ years. But why is that? Why? I studied what happened. I analyzed their footage, talked to their teammates, interviewed the clients, double-watched the final products, and I came away with 3 major lessons. Number 1. There is a difference between technical errors and an effort error. Number 2, the ability to troubleshoot is more important than the ability to avoid mistakes. And number 3, it's better to say, I don't know, and find clarity than to guess and be wrong. Let's take a closer look at these lessons one by one using the real-world scenarios that inspired them. First, let's take a look at a wedding we shot. Weddings are tough to record, in theory anyway, but with some strategic timing and a streamlined formula, it's a very low-stress situation for a veteran shooter. We've seen it before. That's why this lead videographer that day felt comfortable from the start. Unfortunately, that comfort is also why they didn't double-check the itinerary beforehand and found themselves in a logistical conundrum since information had changed the night prior. Meanwhile, the rookie who felt over their head caught the mistake changes to the itinerary upon a reread, and showed up with the logistics memorized and an idea of how to course correct. The seasoned pro showed up to each coordinated moment of the day on time, but not early, which meant that they had to rush their ceremony setup more than they needed to, and ended up literally running through the church in order to keep up with the timeline. Meanwhile, the beginner beat everyone to every event, which not only gave them extra time to set up, but extra time to practice. The certified know-it-all didn't tell anyone when they encountered a locked door. They just found a new way around without telling anyone and moved on, which left the other vendors destined to stumble over the same obstacle. Meanwhile, the creative little tadpole communicated the locked door to his peers and helped everyone stay on track. In other words, even though the veterans shot flawlessly, their lack of energy made their job harder. It doesn't matter that they were proficient at setting up and recording because they weren't keeping an eye out for other variables. And even though the rookie had a few mistakes in their footage, their vigor made their job easier. The second lesson came at the main science festival, where we were the media team in charge of filming and editing live presentations to later release online. 3 of us were there, 2 of us being experienced shooters, the other a bright new face. About 20 minutes before showtime, every camera revealed a horrible issue. We had a banding problem. And for anyone unfamiliar with banding, it's when footage gets a really weird stripe crawling across the image because the camera and lights are operating at fast-paced frequencies that are different to one another. So they're like off sync. It's bad. It's very, very bad. Kind of detrimental, in all honesty. I immediately went to talk to the theater manager to see if they could change the frequency in-house, just in case we couldn't solve the problem on our end. As the guy in charge, that was kind of my prerogative. While my number two experimented with different frame rates and shutter speeds, guess and check style, hoping to stumble into the right combination. See, we both knew what would solve the problem, but we weren't exactly sure how to do so we hedged our bets. But our third camera guy, the unseasoned hopeful, if you will, calmly did a quick measurement, did some math in his head, checked his shutter speed, matched it to the fraction exactly, and had the entire issue resolved before I even reached the lobby. While I'm confident all three of us would have eventually found our way to the solution, the new guy's ability to think about the problem differently and brainstorm a solution faster than a veteran could guess and check was not only impressive, it was a huge time save that gave us the ability to catch our breath before what would be a chaotic showtime, something we really appreciated. For our third lesson, I want to look at the example of last month's content shoot for local brewer music store Mark's Music. The morning of the shoot, I felt sick and could not go. But rather than postpone the shoot, which would in turn postpone the release, I sent my contingency shooter, Kyle. See, I trust Kyle. I knew he was going to get the lighting right, the composition perfect, and the audio clean. But where I knew he would need help was interpreting the tone of delivery in the scripts, since he didn't really have time to prepare for them or study them beforehand. But what I know about Kyle is that he's an ask questions first kind of guy. When he doesn't know something, he asks. Sure, he called me 4 times that morning looking for direction, but it didn't bother me at all. I was grateful to keep getting woken up from my nap. Right? It meant that he didn't guess. Because had he guessed, had he shot his shot, had he closed his eyes and fired blindly, kapow, he would have missed the target, or he could have, which could have snowballed into a reshoot, and snowballed into a project over budget, and snowballed into a strained client relationship, and maybe even a lack of trust moving forward. Those are not good things. So as the leader of a project forced to step away, having a fill-in who would prioritize finding clarity over faking confidence protected the client, the vision, the product, and the bottom line. All three of these projects made me appreciate the new guy in a new way I had never felt before. Sure, having veterans on board made me feel safe, but comfort can be dangerous. As I've learned, comfort causes lazy mistakes. Comfort dulls your awareness. Comfort might stunt your growth. So now when I'm recruiting, I'm not just looking for a good portfolio, natural talent, professionalism, and self-reliancy. I'm also looking for hunger, enthusiasm, curiosity, and a drive to always be better tomorrow than you were yesterday. So here's the full circle truth. Evolution requires leaving the comfort zone. Breakthroughs come when you're challenged. Value doesn't necessarily come from experience. Vision can be achieved without confidence. And if you've ever doubted that, remember that half the people running the world are just winging it with a scribbled on clipboard and a hopeful smile. Well, we're almost out of the woods, but we're not there yet. Let's take a detour. I'm overflowing with opinions and I've got to let them fly, so kick back because I'm about to rant. Craft fairs. What the hell? A craft fair is supposed to be a sacred temple of creativity and original thought. Yet somehow they've devolved into an endless row of copy and paste booths. If everyone is crafting the same thing, is anyone actually crafting at all? We are knee-deep in a creativity crisis and nobody seems alarmed but me. I have attended many craft fairs, about 40 in 20 years, a good amount, and by God I have seen some incredible things. I've seen clay ramen bowls with built-in chopstick grooves, of which I bought 4, wool mittens lined with fleece so cozy that seasonal depression just melts away, and barbecue sauces so spicy that it should require a fire permit. I've seen cribbage boards so elegant they could have been carved by the goddess of art Minerva herself, and fudge so scrumdiddlyumptious I can't seem to help buy 3 pounds for myself and another 3 pounds for Christmas gifts, which I'll probably also eat since I have no willpower. Shout out Wicked Tasty Fudge, a national treasure right here in Maine. Yummy! But here's the problem. These wonders are rare. You only find them 1 in every couple dozen booths, somewhere between the first coaster lady and the 9th. Now, don't get me wrong, I respect a good coaster, right? I've bought a set on more than a few occasions. But 20 coaster booths lighting the sky, fighting for my loyalty feels like an emotional trap. What do you want from me? 5 years ago, I had my first macaroon at the Bangor Craft Fair, and it was magic. This year, I went to the same show, and there were macaroons around every corner. Must be nice splitting that revenue, guys. It's like trends hit people and their brains go, oh, cool, I'll just do exactly that and hope the universe doesn't put us next to each other. You know, I walked past 7 vendors selling custom tumblers with the same design patterns. Who am I supposed to buy from when the products are exactly the same? The one with the cuter chalkboard sign? This one or that one isn't customization. It's choice illusion. I remember 10 years ago, cornhole was all the rage, which is probably why every craft fair now in flying distance has 4 cornhole board vendors. Meanwhile, pickleball is trending as we speak, and there wasn't a handmade paddle in sight. I mean, if you're going to jump on the bandwagon, at least do it before it leaves the barn. Sorry, not sorry, but if you're late to the trend, you missed it. Where's the bold creativity, huh? Following a trend isn't enough, all right? You have to be ahead of it, or at least next to it. Not 50 yards behind running alongside with an angry mob of people who look exactly like you. When everything starts to look the same, creativity face plants. So bring something new to the table, or don't bother taking a seat. Heesh. Thanks for listening. Thank you for walking the back road with me. The end of this journey has come, but with 35 episodes behind us and many more ahead of us, there's plenty more to learn. Stay tuned next week where we talk about evolving a little bit more with a live interview. And before we wrap up completely, I want to thank anyone who has been listening from the beginning, or even from the middle. Loyalty is when a person shows up for you even when they don't have to. And if you've made it this far into this podcast, then you're that person in my life. And I hope I'm that for you as well. Truly. Don't forget to follow Northern Oak Media on social media, and if you have any questions for you or your brand, email me at ethan@northernoakmedia.com. Catch new episodes of The Back Road every other Wednesday at noon wherever podcasts are found, and remember, you can get there from here. Good luck out there. Unless you're driving, then deep... Yeah, joke number 1 missed. Each new episode made adjustments. My back hurts. My back hurts. Story time.